Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Mark Lynn. Namaskar. Coming up in the next hour. Campaigning shifts gears for the final two phases in India. Leaders across the political spectrum canvass across 58 seats in the sixth phase, polling on the 25th of May. Israel urges civilized countries to spurn the ICC warrants. The US rejects the ICC's application. Italy says it's unacceptable to equate Israel with Hamas. Mourners pay last respects to the mortal remains of the late President Raisi in Iran. India observes a day of state mourning. French President Macron heads to the riot-hit New Caledonia as Australia and New Zealand evacuate tourists. Well, let's get you the latest on the world's largest democratic election in India. Campaigning is underway in full swing for the last two phases of India's parliamentary election. Political parties are making a final push to get their message across to the voters. India polls in the next two phases on May 25 and June 1, and the counting of votes takes place on the 4th of June. Let's look at this report.
Campaigning is on in full swing for the last two phases of India's parliamentary election. On Tuesday, Prime Minister, in a bid to woo voters, addressed a rally in Bihar's Maharajganj and Motihari and interacted with more than 25,000 women in Uttar Pradesh's Varanasi. In his address in Uttar Pradesh's Prayagraj, he criticized the previous government for ignoring the youth.
सपा सरकार में माफिया गरीबों की जमीनों पर कब्जा करता था। अब उसके अवैध महल तोड़कर भाजपा सरकार वहां गरीबों के लिए घर बनवा रही है। साथियों, प्रयागराज शिक्षा का इतना बड़ा केंद्र है। यहां के युवा कभी भूल नहीं सकते सपा सरकार कैसे आपके सपनों का सौदा करती थी।
BJP senior leaders were also active in the campaign trail. BJP President JP Nadda held a roadshow in Haryana, while Union Home Minister Amit Shah campaigned in Odisha. Union Defence Minister Rajnath Singh addressed a public rally in Jharkhand's Bokaro. Congress President Mallikarjun Kharge took to the stage in Haryana, condemning the ruling party's alleged targeting of Congress leader Rahul Gandhi.
कि यहाँ के सरकार के पास रिसोर्सेस बहुत है और अच्छी तरह से कोई किसी को बोझा न बनते हुए वो ठीक ढंग से सरकार चलाएंगे। इस राज्य के ऊपर कुल 70,000 करोड़ था कर्जा। 2014 और 2024 के बीच ये कर्ज बढ़कर 3,16,000 करोड़ रुपए हो गया।
West Bengal Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee defended a party against allegations of violence in the state.
That's why I said during the election time, everyone expects me to go there to campaign for them. I will definitely go to all the places, just like I did to Hingalganj a few days ago. I will definitely be there.
Chaos erupted during a rally by Samajwadi Party leader Akhilesh Yadav in Azamgarh, Sarai Mir. Disruptions marred the event, which was being held for the SP candidate in the Lalganj Lok Sabha seat. With the election entering its final stage, the fervour of campaigning has intensified, with leaders from various political parties making a last-minute push to sway voters in their favour. Ravindra Chauhan's report for DD India.
The temple town of Puri is all decked up for the grand festival of democracy. The constituency goes to the polls on the 25th of May. The seat is considered one of the most prestigious ones in the state. Lord Jagannath Temple attracts millions of people around the year, every year. And the election campaign of major parties remains focused on two issues related to the temple. DD India's Ravi Daman reports.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi during a massive roadshow in Odisha's Puri town. Prime Minister also visited the Lord Jagannath Temple. PM also met the temple servitors and promised solution to the lost keys of the temple treasury. Later in the public meetings in the state, Prime Minister targeted the Biju Janata Dal-led state government on the issue of mysterious disappearance of the keys to the Ratna Bhandar or the jewel store of the temple.
बीजेडी सरकार में जगन्नाथ जी का मंदिर भी सुरक्षित नहीं बचा है। पिछले 6 साल से श्री रत्न भंडार की चाबी का अता पता नहीं है।
In April 2018, the state government made an attempt to open the Ratna Bhandar situated near the sanctum sanctorum of the temple, but the keys could not be found. The treasury of the temple contains the gold and jewelries offered by devotees across the world through the years. The state government then ordered a judicial inquiry, and the report was also submitted in November 2018. The report has not yet been made public by the state government. BJD on its part is trying to downplay the entire issue, and its leaders are saying that Ratna Bhandar will be opened during the Rath Yatra scheduled in few months' time. The BJD is trying to showcase the much touted Puri Parikrama project as an excellent achievement. One section of the corridor project around the Lord Jagannath Temple was inaugurated earlier this year.
You are asking Puri specific question. There are 3-4 things. One is, yes, this Parikrama, because everything revolves around the temple here. Everyone's, whether it's tourism, whether it is people's livelihood, everything, and their lifestyles, everything is temple-centric here.
Puri, one of 4 Char Dham sites for the Hindus, goes to poll in the 6th phase on 25th of May. The seat has been a Biju Janata Dal bastion since past many elections, with the party's nominees winning it by huge margins, except in 2019 when the BJP managed to considerably reduce the lead. Now the temple town is agog with a political slugfest between the two major parties, BJP and BJD, on issues revolving around the most important landmark of not only the town but the entire state. Be it the issue of the temple corridor project, for which the state government of the BJD is trying to take all the credit, or the mysterious case of missing keys of the Ratna Bhandar, it is beyond doubt that this electoral season, the Lord Jagannath Temple and the issues associated with it have taken center stage in politics. With camera person Sanjay Jaina in Puri, Ravi Daman for DD India.
In the 6th phase of Lok Sabha elections, UP's 14 constituencies will go to the polls on the 25th of May. And one of the most important constituencies is Azamgarh, the eastern part of Uttar Pradesh, which was earlier known mostly, for criminal activities. But now the picture is changing and people want more positive changes in their lives. DD India's Deepika Mehto sends us this report.
The Azamgarh Lok Sabha constituency, dominated by the Yadavs, has been a pivotal battleground in the eastern region of Uttar Pradesh. From development to women's security, many issues keep picking up pace here as and when the elections take place. But what is more interesting to see is that with every Lok Sabha elections, the excitement of the voters keeps amping up as well. Team DD India understands the pulse of the voters. We spoke with a group of men who came all the way from Rajasthan to spread awareness about voting in Azamgarh.
हम यहाँ की आम जनता को जागृत करने के लिए आए हैं और उनसे निवेदन करने के लिए आए हैं कि आप ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा मतदान करें, ताकि ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा मतदान होगा तो जो ही ज़्यादा मतदान होगा तो एक अच्छा जनप्रतिनिधि निकल करके आएगा।
While people are coming from across India to spread voting awareness, the youth of Azamgarh says that they want to see job opportunities, better facilities and infrastructure in the region.
हम चाहते हैं कि यहाँ पर फैक्ट्रियाँ खुलें, यहाँ पर बड़े बड़े स्टेडियम बने, जो युवा हैं कसरत करते हैं या फौज में जाना चाहते हैं उनके लिए भी विद्यालय की स्थापना हो और युवा के भविष्य का निर्माण होगा तो समझिए कि देश के भविष्य का निर्माण होगा।
The temperature is soaring here hour by hour in Azamgarh, but nothing is dampening the spirit of the voters. We spoke to a group of women who said that the picture has changed here in Azamgarh and women feel safe.
बहुत बदलाव देखे हैं। महिलाएं सुरक्षित नहीं थी, बहुत ज़्यादा गुंडागर्दी थी सपा और बसपा के राज में, लेकिन पूज्य आदित्यनाथ योगी जी महाराज जब से आए हैं तब से हम महिलाओं को काफ़ी सुरक्षा मिली है और हमारी बेटियां भी पढ़ पाती हैं।
So there you heard those vibrant ladies, those beautiful ladies who've come here in this peak afternoon. It is really hot in Azamgarh, but they are all excited. Nothing is beating their enthusiasm because they want to go and vote on the 25th of May. They do understand the importance of vote and they want to see development as the main agenda here in Azamgarh of Uttar Pradesh. With camera person Sanjeev, this is Deepika reporting for DD India.
What's still to come here on DD India News Hour? Israel urges countries to reject ICC warrants which equate Netanyahu with Hamas. New AI rules, they impose strict transparency on high-risk systems, and these rules go into force in Europe next month.
Voice of a rising aspirational world. Stories of challenges, struggles and accomplishment. A world battling conflict, hunger and poverty. Embracing growth, development, science and technology. A voice of progress, a voice of unity. Watch Voice of the Global South with me, Akshay Dongre, only on DD India.
And you're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Mark Lynn. Now, the US President Joe Biden has criticized the International Criminal Court's decision to seek arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the Minister for Defense Yoav Gallant, calling this move outrageous. Other Western leaders have also come out in support of Israel. The Prime Minister Netanyahu said that the ICC prosecutors' move is absurd and that the comparison to Hamas is shameful. However, the European Union has said that the International Criminal Court is an important and independent institution.
The request by International Criminal Court for arrest warrants against Israeli and Hamas leaders for alleged war crimes triggered a global reaction. Number of countries came in support of Israel. Rejecting ICC's application for arrest warrants against Israeli leaders, US President Joe Biden said that Israel was the victim dating back to the October 7th attack on southern Israel by Hamas militants.
Let me be clear. We reject the ICC's application for arrest warrants against Israeli leaders. Whatever these warrants may imply, there is no equivalence between Israel and Hamas. And it's clear Israel wants to do all it can to ensure civilian protection.
While British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak called ICC seeking arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu and Defense Minister Yoav Gallant as deeply unhelpful development.
Well, this is a deeply unhelpful development. Of course, it's still subject to a final decision, but it remains deeply unhelpful nonetheless. There is no moral equivalence between a democratic state exercising its lawful right to self-defense and the terrorist group Hamas.
Swedish Foreign Minister Tobias Billström questioned the equating of Israel and Hamas, but affirmed that his country defers to the ICC decision. Denmark's foreign minister too said that his country takes requests by ICC for arrest warrants against Israeli and Hamas leaders for alleged war crimes very seriously. However, European Union said it supports the International Criminal Court for its central role in bringing justice to victims in all situations under its jurisdiction.
On ICC, I can only say that there is established EU position on the ICC in the Council conclusions from June last year, where the member states have said very much that the European Union supports the ICC for its central role in bringing justice to victims in all situations under its jurisdiction.
While a member of the Irish government said that the International Criminal Court should be allowed to do its work. On the other hand, an Israeli government spokesman said on Tuesday that Israel urges nations of the civilized world to oppose the International Criminal Court's prosecutors' request for arrest warrants against its leader. Fuzail Ahmed's report for DD India.
And for more on the story, we are joined by Sarah Coates, who's joining us from Tel Aviv in Israel. Sarah, how much support is Israel receiving in that request, to reject these warrants?
Well, Mark, unsurprisingly, a lot of support from Israel's closest ally, the United States. We've already heard from President Biden. He's calling this decision outrageous. Now, in the last few minutes, it's broken that US Secretary of State Antony Blinken has told a Senate hearing that the Biden administration is ready to work with Congress on a bipartisan basis on an appropriate response to the ICC seeking these arrest warrants against Israeli officials. Now, certainly, of course, a lot of concern here in Israel. There have been meetings held throughout the day between senior Israeli officials and their lawyers trying to work out where to go from here. While also the Israeli Foreign Minister, Israel Katz, he set up a situation room to try and deal with this latest problem that Israel is facing. Now, it's certainly, as I said, causing a lot of concern here in Israel, and senior officials are really seeing this not as even an attack just on them, but an attack against the entire country. So certainly a lot of concern right around the country, Mark.
Also, Sarah, could there be some sort of pressure from within the government, on Netanyahu? Is that being seen at all after all this is happening?
Well, there's been a lot of pressure on the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu for months now. He is under intense pressure. And just to give you an update on the latest sort of pressure that he's facing now, Mark, the communications minister here, Shlomo Karhi, he has just instructed Israeli authorities to actually confiscate the broadcast equipment of the Associated Press. Now, they had a live shot looking out over Gaza, but on the Israeli side of the border, with the communications minister now accusing the Associated Press of working with Al Jazeera, which we do need to remember was banned here in Israel a few weeks ago. Now, we've heard from the opposition leader, Yair Lapid. He's come out to say that this is absolute madness. He says that the communications minister is really now just determined really to ostracize Israel in the eyes of the world. Now, we also need to remember the pressure that Benjamin Netanyahu is coming under from his war cabinet member, Benny Gantz. He put out that 6-point plan just a couple of days ago, giving Netanyahu an ultimatum, giving Netanyahu a date to say that this 6-point plan must be enacted by, that is the 8th of next month. Otherwise, he will bolt this Israeli war cabinet. So certainly, it's not just political pressure that Netanyahu is facing, but also on the Israeli street, protests have really been picking up on a daily basis, with fed-up Israelis calling on him to stand down, calling for fresh elections to be held now, also demanding that he do a deal to get these remaining 124 hostages home.
Sarah Coates in Tel Aviv, thanks very much. Now, 16 companies involved in artificial intelligence, including Alphabet's Google, as well as companies from China, South Korea and the United Arab Emirates, they've committed to safe AI development as South Korea and Britain host a global AI summit in Seoul. The companies pledged to publish safety frameworks on how they will measure risks of the frontier AI models. DD India's John Beaver reports from Bristol.
Expanded list of companies who have signed up to develop AI safely. 16 global companies now involved, and these really are the giants of the industry. We have companies like you mentioned, such as Google, but also Microsoft and OpenAI, all pledging to develop AI safely. Also, the UK government very keen to point out that a Chinese AI company is involved as well. They're highlighting that as significant because, of course, you need some global agreement on the best way to regulate AI to try and mitigate any dangers there might be. Balancing safety versus progress is how a lot of the AI experts are currently weighing up this effort to try and regulate the industry. We've seen AI assistants being unveiled over the last days and weeks, and so there's always a concern that any regulation will fail to keep up with the rapid pace of change in this industry. The UK is really attempting to position itself as a world leader in AI. I was at the AI summit in Bletchley Park back in November, where a framework was announced to test these AI models, and the summit in South Korea is really building on that. There is, of course, a lot of concern about the misuse of this technology by what they call bad actors for things such as trying to influence elections. So certainly the UK government and the South Korean government very keen to say that progress has been made when it comes to regulating AI.
Europe's landmark rules on artificial intelligence will enter into force next month after EU countries endorsed it on Tuesday. Now, a political deal reached in December, setting a potential global benchmark for a technology used in business and everyday life. The vote by EU countries came 2 months after EU lawmakers backed the AI legislation drafted by the European Commission in 2021 after making a number of key changes. The AI Act imposes strict transparency obligations on high-risk AI systems, while such requirements for general-purpose AI models will be lighter. And to demystify this for us a little bit, we have Alex Kadir joining us from Brussels with more. Alex, how is this law going to be implemented?
Well, this is landmark legislation, and so I think even the implementation will take some time to be rolled out. It will be enforced by the member states, like most, if not all, of EU law, so that will be one of the main aspects. But to give you a sense of how much power the EU has given itself in this particular piece of legislation, it can fine large companies or governments that fail to respect the AI Act up to 7% of global turnover for some of those tech giants. So it is really a piece of legislation that does have teeth, that does have bite, that will be enforceable across the European Union. It's also a global first. So that's why we've seen a progressive rollout of this legislation. We know the use of AI, for example, in social scoring or in mass surveillance. Those rules will only kick in 6 months' time, and then for slightly less risky AI models, that will take a little bit longer for the rules to be implemented. But certainly that slow process, not a representation that the EU doesn't take this seriously. In fact, it is the first legislation of its kind in the world.
Also, Alex, is there any resistance from the tech companies that are involved with AI? After all, it's something that has a lot of good in it, and the world is taking to it quite, as if it's going to solve a lot of problems.
Yeah, well, there was certainly some resistance because of the burden of the legislation, or certainly they saw it as a piece of legislation that went further than certainly the American model, which is more on self-regulation than it is what the EU has done. So certainly the tech companies did have some complaints. They also said it would be too burdensome, and the liabilities would be too high, and the companies would have costs that are too high just to comply with this regulation. They also said that those costs and the administrative burden placed on them by the AI Act would quash creativity and quash investment and research and new technologies. That is one of the challenges for European tech companies in particular, is to compete with giants from India, from the United States, from other very, very large tech markets as well. The complaints from tech companies is that the AI Act will make it more difficult for them to do so. Having said that, a lot of them, all of them were consulted, were brought into this process, had their voices heard when it comes to this legislation. It was clear that the European Commission and the European Union wanted this legislation because although, as you rightly pointed out, there are some virtues, there are some values to AI technology, they also see this as a very serious risk that needs legislation.
We'll leave it there. Thanks very much, Alex Kadir in Brussels. Let's take a look at other stories making news around the world. The Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba has asked European Union to speed up the confiscation of Russian assets. Russian frozen assets are worth around 260 billion euros. The amounts are not commensurate with the amount of frozen assets. Madrid has permanently recalled its ambassador in Buenos Aires over derogatory comments made by the Argentinian President Javier Milei in Spain. The Spanish Foreign Minister, José Manuel Alvarez, said that the embassy in Argentina would now be headed by the charge d'affaires. A World Food Programme report said that food prices in Sudan in the month of April increased by 127% compared to the corresponding period last year. The soaring food prices are a result of the ongoing conflict that began between Sudan's military and the paramilitary called the Rapid Support Forces. A Russian physicist, Anatoly Maslov, was convicted of treason and sentenced to 14 years in a penal colony. Maslov, along with others, had conducted theoretical work in areas related to development of hypersonic missiles. Now, still to come here on DD India News Hour. Iran bids farewell to the late President Raisi. French President Macron heads to New Caledonia as riots and looting continue despite the state of emergency.
As India decides in the world's largest election,
We help you feel the pulse of the nation.
I am Sakal Bhatt.
I am Shubhendu Ghosh.
This election season, join us on a journey of India.
We are in Assam. This is the tea city of India.
From down south, Tamil Nadu,
Discover the colors of democracy.
gateway to northeast of India.
Coastal state of Kerala. Watch Poll Pulse on DT India.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Mark Lynn. Here's a recap of our main stories. Campaigning shifts gears for the final two phases in India. Leaders across the political spectrum canvass across 58 seats in the sixth phase of polling, which takes place on May 25. Israel urges civilized nations to spurn ICC warrants. The US rejects the ICC's application, and Italy says that it's unacceptable to equate Israel and Hamas. Mourners pay their last respects to the mortal remains of late President Raisi in Iran, and India too observes a day of state mourning. The French President Emmanuel Macron heads to the riot-hit New Caledonia as Australia and New Zealand evacuate tourists from there. Mourners gathered on the entire route of a rally in Tehran on Tuesday commemorating the late President of Iran, Ebrahim Raisi, who died in a helicopter crash near the Azerbaijan border at the weekend. Raisi's body was flown from Tabriz to Tehran before heading to the holy Shiite Muslim city of Qom. It will return to Tehran's Grand Mosque before being transferred to Mashhad, which is in eastern Iran, for burial on Thursday. But let's look at this report, which puts Raisi's death into a geopolitical context. A tearful adieu to a man who served as their president. He was seen by the West as a hardliner and a potential successor to the Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Thousands of mourners gathered in Tabriz for the funeral procession of Ebrahim Raisi and those killed with him, including his foreign minister Hossein Amir Abdullahian.
May their souls rest in peace. The nation is able to deal with this issue and everything will return to normal thanks to God.
Funeral ceremonies for Raisi will be held to Thursday in the cities of Tabriz, Qom, Tehran and Birjand until his final burial at the Imam Reza Shrine in Mashhad. The mourners proudly claim that no amount of external pressure can bring Iran to its knees.
External danger has never brought the people to their knees. People have always been united against external danger throughout the history.
India observed a day of state mourning on Tuesday as a mark of respect to the memory of President Raisi. India's national flag was seen flying at half-mast on government buildings. Flags at the Iranian embassy in New Delhi were lowered. Raisi was killed when his helicopter crashed in poor weather in mountains near the Azerbaijan border. Among the many mourners on the streets of Tabriz were police officers and Air Force personnel. An inquiry has been ordered into the helicopter crash.
I do think that they're reflecting on the fact that this is an aged U.S. helicopter that it looks like Raisi was flying into. And so it's further evidence of the consequences of U.S. sanctions upon Iran.
The U.S. State Department insists that the Iranian regime is to blame for flying a helicopter that was well past its time. The U.S. has no plans of rethinking its sanction regimen against Iran.
So we will continue to fully enforce our sanctions regime, including our sanctions regimes on aircraft for use by the Iranian government. Ultimately, it's the Iranian government that is responsible for the decision to fly a 45-year-old helicopter in what was described as poor weather conditions, not any other actor.
Iran and its proxies were seen by the West as playing a destabilizing role in West Asia from the US-Israel point of view. Hezbollah in Lebanon, Houthis in Yemen, Hamas and Palestinian Jihad in Palestine.
I think the track record of the past few months clearly demonstrates that both Iran and the United States struggle to keep their regional allies in check.
The long shadow war between Iran and Israel is no longer in the shadows. The new leadership that will be elected at the end of June must first be vetted by the Guardian Council, which weighs heavily in favor of hardliners. The chances of a moderate taking office seem remote, but economic issues matter.
Iran is no exception with regard to trying to win an election by addressing economic difficulties of the country that the person is running in. And I think, yes, that's going to be a significant part of the election campaign as we go forward.
Clearly, something must give if Iran is to take flight in safety. Bureau Report, DD India. India's Vice President Jagdeep Dhankar will pay a visit to Iran on the 22nd of May to attend the official ceremony to pay condolences on the tragic demise of President Ebrahim Raisi, the Foreign Minister Hossein Amir Abdullahian and other Iranian officials in the unfortunate helicopter crash on the 19th of May 2024. President Draupadi Murmu and Prime Minister Narendra Modi have conveyed their condolences to the government and the people of Iran. External Affairs Minister visited the Embassy of Iran in New Delhi on the 21st of May 2024 to convey India's condolences on the tragic loss. India observed a day of national mourning on Tuesday, the 21st of May 2024. Around 3,200 people were waiting to leave or enter New Caledonia as commercial flights were cancelled due to the unrest that broke out last week. Now, Australia and New Zealand have sent flights to evacuate their stranded citizens. French President Emmanuel Macron will be travelling to New Caledonia as the unrest continues despite the state of emergency. DD India's Mihir Makuri gives us a 360-degree view.
The sight of long lines of torched cars, looted shops and debris in the South Pacific is not a usual one. These streets of New Caledonia reveal the extent of destruction caused by week-long deadly riots. At least 6 people have died and many more are feared dead. The civil unrest was caused by a controversial bill that allowed more French residents to vote in local elections. The 5 nights of upheaval has led Australia and New Zealand to send government planes to New Caledonia on Tuesday to evacuate nationals from the French territory. Now let's try to connect New Caledonia's history with its present scenario. Indigenous Melanesian Kanak people have inhabited the area for thousands of years. Western colonial interest in the island sparked with the arrival of British explorer James Cook in 1774. In 1853, France annexed the island, initiating a long period of control. New Caledonia officially became a French overseas territory in the year 1946. Starting in 1970s, following a nickel boom that attracted outsiders, tensions escalated on the island. Influx of outsiders sparked conflicts between Paris and Kanak independence movements. In 1998, Nomia Accord was signed, which helped resolve the conflict by outlining a path to gradual autonomy. Nomia Accord also restricted voting to Kanak and migrants residing in New Caledonia before 1998. Nomia Accord allowed for 3 referendums to determine the future of New Caledonia. In all the 3 referendums, independence was rejected. The island's each community has different outlook. Kanaks favor independence. However, European origin groups and other immigrants want French rule to continue. But why have these tensions exploded recently? Paris sees 1998 Nomia Accord's arrangement as undemocratic. This led to French lawmakers to approve a constitutional amendment. New bill opened the electorate to those who have lived in New Caledonia for at least 10 years. Macron has said he will delay rubber stamping it into new law. As per Macron, Paris will invite representatives of the territory's population to Paris for talks to reach a negotiated settlement. But Macron has said a new agreement must be reached by June or he will sign it into law. What does the new bill say? The new bill will enable French residents who have lived in New Caledonia for over 10 years to vote in provincial elections. Many pro-independence Kanaks see this as a possible marginalization of their vote's significance. Now let's see where actually is New Caledonia. A group of 140 plus islands, New Caledonia is an overseas French territory in the warm waters of the Southwest Pacific Ocean. New Caledonia lies about 1500 kilometers east of Australia and is Australia's closest neighbor. The French territory has nearly 300,000 people, with indigenous Kanak making up 40% and Europeans 24%. Why does New Caledonia matter? The mineral-rich territory is at the center of a regional power contest between China and Western allies. New Caledonia is the 3rd largest producer of nickel, essential for stainless steel and EV batteries. New Caledonia is one of 5 French island territories in the Indo-Pacific. It is central to French President Macron's plan to deepen French influence. Macron emphasizes expansion in the Pacific to preserve necessary balances in the region. Australia and New Zealand are currently evacuating their nationals from New Caledonia by sending government planes. Amidst heightened security, French President Emmanuel Macron will also travel to the Pacific overseas territory of New Caledonia. Mihir Makri, reporting for DD India.
And let's connect with Ross Cullen, who's joining us from Paris with an update on this story. Well, Ross, what is President Macron's visit expected to achieve when he goes to New Caledonia? Is he also likely to face the wrath of the people there?
Oh, hi Mark. Emmanuel Macron will be taking off this evening local time here in France in just a matter of hours, headed to New Caledonia for his first visit there since the unrest broke out more than a week ago. We do know that the French president will be launching some sort of mission or project there. The government wasn't giving all the details. They also didn't say how long he would stay on the island, but they did say he would be there to try to help this restoration of order, maybe have the chance as well to create the conditions for dialogue with some of the separatist and independentist groups. Also, he's going to be joined by the French Interior Minister Gérald Darmanin and the French Defence Secretary Sébastien Lecornu. We know the military have been deployed to protect public buildings. We also know that Gérald Darmanin said a bit earlier today, Tuesday, that another 4 planes with 3,000 more security personnel would be travelling to the island over the next 2 days.
Also, Ross, is there fear that the kind of unrest that we are seeing in New Caledonia can spread to other French overseas territories as well? And is that a bit of a concern back in Paris?
Well, the presidents of the different overseas territories did sign a joint letter on Sunday calling on the French government here in Paris, the central government, to delay the plan of having a Congress. That's when you have the Senate and the National Assembly coming together in a joint session of Parliament. It's what you need to do if you want to change the constitution, as the government wants to do. With these contentious voting reforms, the plans to widen out voting rights to French residents who've been on the island for at least 10 years. That's what sparked this whole civil unrest. If you want to have constitutional reform, you need to have that joint session of Parliament. Emmanuel Macron wants to hold it next month, but the presidents of different overseas territories have signed that joint letter saying you have to delay it, the conditions are not right, the whole situation is far too tense at the moment for that constitutional reform discussion, the joint session of Parliament, to go ahead.
We'll leave it there. Thanks very much. Ross Cullen joining us from Paris, and President Macron is going to be leaving very soon for New Caledonia. Donald Trump's defense team arrested its case in the criminal hush money trial on Tuesday without calling the former US president to testify. Trump's lawyers called 2 witnesses in his defense. Justice Juan Merchan said that the jurors would return next Tuesday to hear the closing arguments, with deliberations likely beginning the following day. Trump is accused of covering up a $130,000 payment that bought the silence of the adult actor, an adult actor. Now, also, Trump has pleaded not guilty. He denies any wrongdoing. The UK government is settling out, in fact, it's setting out multi-billion-dollar compensation plans after an infected blood scandal. And also now they have said that they would begin making the interim compensation payments to the victims of this contaminated blood products scandal. The Prime Minister Rishi Sunak apologized on behalf of successive governments for the failure, which saw nearly 300,000, 3,000 people, not 300,000, which saw 3,000 people die so far. Let's look at this report.
The UK has announced an estimated multi-billion-pound scheme to compensate victims of the contaminated blood scandal and their families by the end of the year.
Today I'm announcing that the government will be making further interim payments ahead of the establishment of the full scheme. Payments of £210,000 will be made to living infected beneficiaries.
Earlier on Monday, British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak apologised on behalf of successive governments for the failure.
Today I want to speak directly to the victims and their families, some of whom are with us in the gallery. I want to make a wholehearted and unequivocal apology for this terrible injustice.
The announcement came a day after a damning report found both the NHS and the government responsible for the tragedy. The scandal, dating back to the 1970s and the 80s, had resulted in roughly 3,000 deaths. So what is the contaminated blood scandal? During the 1970s and the 80s, thousands with haemophilia received HIV and hepatitis-infected blood. In the early 1970s, NHS started using a treatment for haemophilia called Factor VIII. This was a processed pharmaceutical product that was created by pooling plasma from many donors. The product used by NHS was imported from the United States, sourced from high-risk groups like prisoners and IV drug users. More than 30,000 people were infected with HIV, hepatitis C or haemophiliacs. Nearly 2/3 of those who were infected with HIV later died of AIDS-related illnesses. As the government prepares to roll out the compensation scheme, the legacy of the contaminated blood scandal serves as a stark reminder of the importance of vigilance and accountability in public health.
Foreign ministers of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization grouping met in Astana on Tuesday to discuss regional security issues. The meeting also aimed at finalizing preparations for the upcoming summit of the SCO Council of the Heads of State, slated to be held in the Kazakh capital in July. Kazakhstan's President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev, in his opening remarks, said, and I quote, "The cooperation programs agreed with you on the fight against terrorism, separatism and extremism is a concrete step in this direction." Now, India's delegation at the meeting is led by Dammu Ravi, who is the Secretary, Economic Relations at the External Affairs Ministry. Dammu Ravi met the Russian Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, Andrei Rudkenko, and other officials. Secretary Ravi also met the Deputy Foreign Minister of Iran, Mehdi Safari, on the sidelines of the SCO Council of Foreign Ministers meeting in Astana. Still to come here on DD India News Hour. India's Chief of Defence Staff calls for the creation of joint culture at the three services. India's Met Office has issued a red alert for severe heatwave conditions in northwest India for the next 3 days.
Wherever news breaks, whatever it takes.
Connecting corners, cutting across continents.
Stories that matter from across the globe.
Accurate, authentic journalism that serves you right. From politics to glamour, from sports to world affairs, with a fusion of aesthetics and substance. Introducing news in a new avatar. Experience the world through a new lens. Stay tuned to DD India for an exciting journey beyond borders.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Mark Lynn. Moving on, the BIMSTEC Charter, entered into force on the 20th of May 2024, provides legal and institutional framework for meaningful cooperation and deeper integration of the Bay of Bengal region. It enables BIMSTEC to partner with other interested countries and organizations and also to admit observers and new members. The BIMSTEC Charter was signed and adopted during the 5th BIMSTEC Summit, virtual summit in Colombo, Sri Lanka on the 30th of March 2022. With the endorsement of the BIMSTEC Charter by the Parliament of Nepal in April of 2024, all member states have completed the ratification of this foundational document. The Charter, among other things, confers legal personality on the organization. It enables the conclusion of agreements with countries or sub-regional, regional and international organizations and institutions. India's External Affairs Minister Jai Shankar stated that the entry into force of the BIMSTEC Charter reaffirms India's commitment to a prosperous, peaceful and sustainable neighborhood. On X, Jai Shankar said, "The entry into force of the BIMSTEC Charter reaffirms the commitment to a prosperous, peaceful and sustainable neighborhood. It is achieved by building on our shared history, culture, vision and mutual respect for each other. BIMSTEC reflects the synthesis of our neighborhood first and Act East policies." Russian forces have started the first stage of exercises that involve practical training in the preparation and use of non-strategic nuclear weapons. The Defense Ministry said that the first stage of the exercise involved Iskander and Kinsai missiles. The military said that the drills are aimed at ensuring that the units and equipment are ready for the combat use of non-strategic nuclear weapons to respond and unconditionally ensure the territorial integrity and sovereignty of the Russian state. The Russian President Vladimir Putin ordered the drills earlier this month. India's Chief of Defence Staff, General Anil Chauhan, has called upon the three services to create a joint culture as they move towards forming joint operational structures. He was speaking at Jointmanship, a way forward, a way ahead, as part of the 22nd Major General Samir Sinha Memorial Lecture organized at the USI in Delhi. The CDS has termed jointness and integration as prerequisites to the creation of a functional integrated theatre command, and the CDS also said that the theatre commands will not be an end state but the beginning of the next set of reforms. The India Meteorological Department issued a red alert for a severe heat wave over the plains of northwestern India, northern Madhya Pradesh and Gujarat over the next 3 days. The Weather Department forecast a gradual rise of about 2 to 3 degrees Celsius over parts of northwestern and central India for the next 4 days. On Monday, the maximum temperatures were in the range of 43 to 47 degrees Celsius over northern and western India. The Joint Secretary in the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, Sanjeev Shankar, met representatives from the UK and Japan at their respective pavilions at the Cannes Film Festival market on Tuesday. They discussed future prospects in the domain of film production. Let's take a look.
We are at the Japanese pavilion, which is very close to the Bharat Pavilion here at the 77th edition of the Cannes Film Festival. There are already efforts underway to have more and more co-productions between India and Japan. Let's talk about it with the Japanese representative and the Indian representative present here. Well, ma'am, tell us about what is the present environment like for co-productions between India and Japan?
Many Asian countries are expanding their co-production market, and we haven't had any co-production agreement yet, but we're expecting more collaboration will take place between India and Japan.
So there's already an incentive scheme that India has for various official co-productions. So what is the future prospect looking like? What is the current environment like?
So first thing that we need to do is to have a co-production agreement with Japan. Japan is a very important country for India, and I was very surprised that so far we don't have a co-production agreement with Japan. We have with other countries but not with Japan. From this meeting, what we are taking is that we both have agreed to take steps to walk the path of forming up a co-production agreement with India and Japan, and that will bring a whole lot of opportunities for both the countries in sharing content and making films in India, both in India and Japan. So that is the way forward that we are trying to achieve.
So that was a conversation with a representative from Japan as well as from the government of India on what the future looks like when it comes to co-production in films between India and Japan. Currently there is no co-production treaty, but efforts are underway to have one. With cameraman YK Loknath, this is Munmun Bhattacharya from Cannes for DD India.
You're watching DD India News Hour. Time now for the sports news. And Rafael Nadal returned to Roland Garros on Monday. This is to practice and to try and figure out whether he's competing at the French Open that he has won 14 times. The 37-year-old Spaniard showed up with his coach Carlos Moya. Now the tournament begins on Sunday and it remains uncertain if Nadal is going to enter. He's still regaining his match readiness after missing nearly all of 2023 with a hip injury that required surgery, and much of the season because of the problems with that hip muscle and an abdominal muscle. His recent loss, in fact, in the Italian Open second round left Nadal unsure about whether he would consider himself ready for the French Open. Liverpool has announced Feyenoord coach Arne Slot as the new coach, replacing Jurgen Klopp. Klopp announced his departure in January and took charge of his final game on Sunday, a 2-0 win against the Wolves. Liverpool said that the Dutchman would take up the position of head coach on the 1st of June, subject to a work permit. The club did not specify the length of his contract in their statement, but Sky Sports said that it understood that Slot had signed a 3-year deal. Slot's arrival has been an open secret, with Liverpool reportedly agreeing to compensate worth up to $12 million. Klopp is in his final speech at the Anfield crowd. He urged the fans to throw their full support behind Slot. Well, that's all we have in this edition of DD India News Hour, but let's know your thoughts on the news of the day. Connect with us on Facebook, X, formerly Twitter, and Instagram. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Mark Lynn from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks very much for watching DD India News Hour. Namaskar.